Your chickens are sick again, or they've stopped laying, or they're just off, and you can't quite figure out why. You've tried the supplements, maybe even antibiotics, spent money you didn't need to spend, and somehow the same problems keep coming back. And this is where most people get stuck. What if the issue isn't a lack of medication? What if it's something much simpler, something that used to be common knowledge and got quietly forgotten? What if the fix has been sitting in your kitchen this whole time and you've been overlooking it? While most people are buying treatments every month, Amish farmers have been raising healthy, productive flocks for generations without any of it. No pharmacy runs, no chemical dependency, just plants used the right way. I'm going to show you 10 of them. What they actually do inside your chickens, why they work, and how to use them properly. Stay with me, because number 3 is one of the fastest ways to calm inflammation in a stressed flock. And number 1 is something almost everyone already has, but uses completely wrong. So, why are most people still doing this the hard way? Let's get into it. Number 10, sage, the plant that quietly keeps your hens producing. The hormone balancer and egg production supporter most backyard keepers never think to use. Picture it, soft, dusty green leaves, slightly fuzzy to the touch, growing in compact mounds. You've seen it in the grocery store. You've probably rubbed it between your fingers and smelled that deep, earthy, almost medicinal scent. It's in holiday stuffing. It's in kitchens everywhere. And almost nobody thinks to bring it to the chicken yard. Most people think sage is just a cooking herb, a flavor, something that goes with poultry, ironically, on the dinner table. But in traditional farming communities, and particularly among Amish keepers who have passed plant knowledge down through generations, sage has been used for something entirely different. It's been used for the poultry, not on it. Farmers who keep heritage flocks have long observed that hens with access to sage in their diet tend to lay more consistently, particularly through seasonal transitions. Those stretches in early spring or late autumn when production dips and keepers start wondering what's wrong. And here's the simple reason why. Sage contains natural compounds, primarily rosmarinic acid and certain flavonoids, that interact with the body's hormonal regulation systems. In laying hens, that matters. Egg production is a hormonal process. Anything that supports hormonal balance, even gently, can have a measurable effect on laying consistency. It also carries mild antioxidant properties that support general cell health. Nothing complicated, just quiet, steady support at the biological level. How do you use it? Dry the leaves and crumble them into feed. A small handful per several birds, 2 to 3 times a week, is enough. Fresh sage can also be bundled and hung in the coop or run, letting birds pick at it as they choose. Self-selection is often underrated. Chickens will often seek out what they need if it's made available. Sage is one of those plants that doesn't look like medicine. It doesn't make a dramatic entrance. But in traditional poultry keeping, it's been part of the rhythm of flock management for a very long time. And most modern keepers don't even know to look at it. Number 9, basil, the parasite fighter hiding in plain sight. The parasite resistance herb almost no one connects to poultry health. You know what basil looks like. Bright green, broad, soft leaves, that unmistakable sweet peppery scent that fills a kitchen the moment you tear a leaf. It's in pasta sauces. It's in every garden center from spring onward. It's one of the most recognizable plants in the world, and it's almost completely ignored when it comes to chickens. Most people think basil is purely a culinary herb, a flavor ingredient, and something with no serious practical function beyond the plate. That assumption is exactly why it gets overlooked. Traditional farming communities, and Amish keepers in particular, have long included aromatic herbs like basil in and around their coops, not for decoration, but for a specific purpose: deterring internal parasites and creating an environment that's less hospitable to the organisms that compromise flock health. Here's what's actually going on beneath the surface. Basil contains volatile oils, primarily eugenol and linalool, that have demonstrated antiparasitic properties in traditional use. Internal parasites are one of the most persistent and damaging threats to a backyard flock. Worms, protozoa, and other organisms quietly reduce feed efficiency, suppress immunity, and wear birds down over time. All keepers often don't notice until the damage is already done. Basil doesn't eliminate a heavy infestation on its own, but as part of a consistent plant-based management approach, it creates an ongoing resistance environment, one that makes it harder for parasites to establish and thrive in the first place. How to use it. Mix fresh or dried basil into feed regularly. Fresh leaves can be scattered in the run. Dried basil can be added to nesting boxes. It carries the added benefit of being mildly repellent to certain insects and mites as well, which is a quiet bonus most keepers discover by accident. Basil is one of those herbs where the gap between what people think it does and what it actually does, in a whole flock management context, is surprisingly large. Number 8, chamomile, the calm in the middle of a stressed flock. It's the stress reducer and flock calming herb that most keepers never consider. Small daisy-like flowers, yellow centers, white petals, feathery green stems. It grows wild in disturbed soil, along roadsides, in gardens where it seeds itself year after year. You've seen it dried in tea bags. You've made it into something warm to drink before bed. Chickens need it for the same reason you do. Most people think of chamomile as a human relaxation product, something gentle and mild, good for sleep, nothing particularly serious. The idea that it has a direct, practical application for poultry welfare doesn't naturally occur to most backyard keepers. But Amish farmers, who raise flocks in close proximity to the rhythms of the farm and understand how environmental stress affects animal health, have used chamomile in and around their chicken operations for generations. And the reason is straightforward. Stress is one of the most underestimated threats to flock health and productivity. Crowding, predator pressure, sudden changes in routine, extreme weather, introduction of new birds, all of these trigger a cortisol-like stress response in chickens. And chronic stress suppresses immunity, disrupts laying, causes feather picking, and opens the door to illness. A flock that is chronically stressed is a flock that is chronically vulnerable. Chamomile contains apigenin, a natural compound with genuine calming and mild anti-anxiety properties, along with anti-inflammatory agents that support digestion and general comfort. In a flock setting, consistent low-level exposure helps take the edge off environmental stressors before they compound into bigger problems. How to apply it? Dried chamomile flowers can be mixed into feed or brewed into a mild tea and added to drinking water. Fresh or dried chamomile scattered in nesting boxes is a traditional use. It soothes brooding hens and contributes to a calmer overall coop atmosphere. During high-stress periods, relocating birds, integrating new flock members, extreme heat. It's one of the most practical tools you have available. Simple. Accessible. Wildly underused. Number 7. Aloe vera. The skin and wound repair most keepers reach for last. The wound healer and external repair plant that's been sitting in your living room this whole time. Thick, fleshy, pointed green leaves with slightly serrated edges. A common house plant. You've probably snapped a leaf and rubbed the clear gel on a sunburn at some point. It's in skincare products, after sun lotions, first aid shelves. Most people think it's a cosmetic plant. Something for humans. Something decorative that occasionally doubles as a minor first aid tool. What most people don't think is, this belongs in a chicken keeper's kit. Traditional farmers have used aloe gel on animals for centuries, and Amish keepers who raise chickens close to the land maintain this practice. The application is direct and practical, wound care and skin repair. Chickens get injured. It's a fact of flock life. Pecking injuries, scratches from predator encounters that didn't quite succeed, foot irritation from rough ground, minor lacerations from equipment or wire, these are routine. And when wounds aren't addressed promptly, they escalate. Other birds peck at them. Infection sets in. What started as a minor injury becomes a serious problem. Aloe vera gel creates a natural protective barrier over wounds. It contains compounds, most notably aloesin, aloe-amodin, and acemanin, that accelerate tissue repair, reduce inflammation at the wound site, and create a mildly antimicrobial surface layer. It also soothes irritated or damaged skin in birds dealing with vent problems, mite damage, or feather loss areas. How to use it: snap a fresh leaf and apply the gel directly to the wound or affected area. It can be reapplied daily for foot issues, bumblefoot in early stages, cracked or irritated pads. A gel application wrapped with clean cloth makes a practical and effective treatment. It's already in a lot of homes. Most chicken keepers just haven't thought to bring it to the coop. Number 6. Thyme. The respiratory protector and antimicrobial keeper's herb. The antimicrobial respiratory herb that most flock keepers completely overlook. small woody stems, tiny oval leaves, dark green, almost miniature in scale. It grows in garden borders, in herb pots on windowsills, in the wild across rocky hillsides in warm climates. You've used it dried in soups and stews. It smells sharp, herbal, clean. Most people think it's just a seasoning, one of those background herbs that adds depth to a dish but doesn't do much beyond that. Then here's what they're missing. Thyme is one of the most potent antimicrobial herbs that grows in a standard kitchen garden, and it has a particular affinity for the respiratory system. In Amish farming communities, thyme has been used for generations in poultry care, specifically during the damp, cold months when respiratory illness moves through flocks. Upper respiratory infections are among the most common and most damaging conditions in backyard chickens. Rattling breath, nasal discharge, swollen eyes, reduced appetite, dropped production. Once it gets into a flock, it spreads fast. The active compound in thyme, thymol, is not a minor ingredient. It's the same compound used in pharmaceutical-grade antiseptics and some commercial poultry treatments. In its natural plant form, it works as a broad-spectrum antimicrobial that is particularly effective against the types of bacteria and pathogens that target the respiratory tract. Thyme also acts as an expectorant. It helps loosen mucus and supports the clearing of airways. In a bird already showing mild respiratory symptoms, that matters enormously. How to use it? Dried thyme can be added to feed or steeped in hot water, cooled, and offered as a herbal water supplement during illness or high-risk periods. Bundles of fresh or dried thyme hung in the coop act as a passive antimicrobial in the air. It can also be combined with oregano, which you'll hear about shortly, for a stronger combined effect during respiratory season. If you're noticing a pattern here, it's this. The things that keep a flock healthy are usually simple, and usually the ones most people overlook first. Number 5, peppermint. The respiratory support plant that smells like your medicine cabinet. The respiratory support and airway clearing herb that's been in your pantry, probably in multiple forms, this whole time. You know peppermint. Everyone knows peppermint. Broad, serrated leaves, deep green, with that immediate cooling sensation the moment you touch them. It spreads aggressively in gardens. Once it's established, it's there permanently. You've had it in tea. You've inhaled it during a head cold. It's in chest rubs, in breath mints, in countless remedies sold at every pharmacy on the planet. Most people connect it to fresh breath, maybe to headaches. Most people don't think of it as a tool for backyard poultry. But Amish farmers who raise chickens in enclosed barns and coops during winter, where air quality becomes a real concern, have understood for generations that peppermint works as a respiratory support for birds, particularly in environments where ammonia from droppings, dust, and cold air all combine to stress the respiratory system. Here's the mechanism. Peppermint contains menthol, a natural compound that opens airways, soothes irritated mucous membranes, and helps birds breathe more freely. In a coop where air gets stale or where early respiratory distress is beginning to show, peppermint creates a measurable difference in the respiratory environment. It also carries a secondary benefit that traditional farmers have long valued. The strong scent is repellent to rodents and many insects. A co-op that smells of peppermint is a coop that pests are less comfortable in. How to use it? Hang bundles of fresh or dried peppermint inside the coop, particularly near roosting areas. Add dried peppermint to nesting boxes. During periods of respiratory stress, a few drops of peppermint oil, well diluted, can be added to a bowl of steaming water placed near, not inside, the coop entrance to allow passive inhalation. Dried peppermint can also be added to feed in small amounts to support birds showing early symptoms. Number 4, turmeric, the anti-inflammatory that most flock keepers have never thought to reach for. The inflammation fighter that's been sitting in spice cabinets for centuries and applied to poultry health for almost as long. Deep golden orange powder, or a nabi. Rough-skinned root that looks unassuming until you cut it open. It stains everything it touches that bright warm yellow. It's in curry. It's in wellness drinks. It's on health food store shelves in capsule form. Over the last decade, almost everyone has heard that turmeric is good for inflammation. What almost nobody considers is what that means for a flock of chickens. Most people hear anti-inflammatory and think of joint health, arthritis, maybe sports recovery. They don't think, my chickens need this. But here's the reality of flock life. Inflammation is a constant. Stress triggers it. Minor infections trigger it. Gut disturbance triggers it. Poor air quality triggers it. Laying itself creates internal physiological stress that benefits from anti-inflammatory support. Yeah, Amish farmers and traditional keepers have used turmeric in the animal husbandry for generations, added to feed, mixed into pastes for topical use, incorporated into daily management. The active compound, curcumin, has well-documented anti-inflammatory properties that work by disrupting the same inflammatory pathways that curcumin works on in humans. The result in a flock, reduced internal inflammation means better feed conversion, improved immune response, more consistent laying in, hens dealing with seasonal stress, and faster recovery from minor illness or injury. It's a broad support tool, not dramatic, not instant in the way a drug might be, but consistent and cumulative in the way that good nutrition always is. Now, how to use it? Add a small amount of ground turmeric to feed. Roughly a quarter teaspoon per bird per week is a reasonable starting point. It can be mixed with a little oil to improve absorption, since curcumin is fat-soluble. Black pepper, if you have it, contains piperine, which dramatically increases curcumin bioavailability. A simple pinch alongside the turmeric makes a meaningful difference in how effectively the body uses it. Number 3. Oregano, the immune system herb that Amish farmers have used instead of antibiotics. The immune strength herb that traditional poultry farmers have long treated as their primary defense against illness. And yes, this is the one I mentioned at the start. Stay with me here. Dark green, slightly fuzzy leaves. A robust, almost sharp herbal scent. It grows easily in gardens and pots. You've used it on pizza. You've probably got it dried in your spice drawer right now. It's one of the most common herbs in Western cooking. Most people think oregano is just Italian seasoning, a flavor, something that has no serious function beyond the kitchen. That perception doesn't survive contact with how traditional farmers actually use it. In Amish communities where antibiotic use is minimized or avoided entirely as a matter of both principle and practice, oregano has served for generations as one of the primary tools for maintaining flock immunity and preventing the bacterial infections that synthetic antibiotics are typically deployed to treat. This isn't folk magic. There's a straightforward reason it works. Oregano contains carvacrol and thymol, two volatile compounds with potent antimicrobial, antifungal, and antiviral properties. Research into oregano oil in commercial poultry production has grown significantly over the last 2 decades as the poultry industry seeks alternatives to antibiotic growth promoters. The findings consistently show improved gut integrity, reduced pathogen load, and better immune marker profiles in flocks receiving oregano supplementation. What Amish farmers arrived at through generations of observation, researchers have been documenting in controlled settings. The mechanisms align. The immune system support here is systemic. It's not treating one specific disease. It's raising the baseline resistance of the flock so that pathogens have a harder time gaining a foothold in the first place. That's the real power of oregano in flock management. Though, how to use it? Dried oregano mixed into feed is the most straightforward approach. A consistent daily supplement, not a reactive measure. Fresh oregano can be scattered in the run. Oregano oil, heavily diluted in water, can be added to drinkers during high-risk periods. Combination with thyme amplifies the antimicrobial effect. This is the herb that convinced a lot of skeptics. Once you see how a flock responds to consistent oregano supplementation over several weeks, it's hard to go back to not using it. Number 2, ginger, the digestive support herb that keeps everything else working. The digestion optimizer that makes every other plant on this list work better. Rough, beige, knobby root. You've sliced it. You've grated it into stir-fries and soups and teas. You've reached for it when your stomach was unsettled. It's warm, spicy, all immediately recognizable, and found in kitchens on every continent. Most people think of ginger as a stomach remedy for humans. Nausea, upset stomach, motion sickness. They don't extend that thinking to their birds, but digestion is the foundation of everything in poultry health. A bird that isn't digesting efficiently isn't absorbing nutrients. A bird that isn't absorbing nutrients isn't building immunity, isn't maintaining feather quality, isn't supporting egg production, isn't recovering from stress or illness. Everything runs through the gut. Amish farmers who manage healthy, productive flocks without pharmaceutical intervention understand this. Ginger has been part of traditional animal husbandry and agricultural communities for a very long time. Used specifically to maintain digestive function, support appetite, and keep the gut environment stable through the seasonal changes that routinely disrupt flock health. Here's what's happening at the plant chemistry level. Ginger contains gingerols and shogaols, compounds that stimulate digestive enzyme activity, improve gut motility, and reduce gut inflammation. In practical terms, that means feed moves through the system correctly, nutrients get absorbed instead of wasted, and the gut lining stays healthier and more resistant to pathogen infiltration. During periods of high stress, when digestion tends to slow and gut health tends to deteriorate, ginger acts as a stabilizer. It keeps the system moving when everything else is pulling it toward dysfunction. How to use it? Grated fresh ginger can be mixed into feed or soaked in water, and offered as a ginger-infused drink. Dried ginger powder can be added to feed consistently. A small amount goes a long way. During illness recovery or periods of poor appetite, ginger added to warm water and offered as a mash can helps stimulate feed intake in birds that have gone off their food. The birds that digest well are the birds that stay healthy, and ginger is the tool that keeps digestion where it needs to be. Number 1, garlic, the plant you already have, the one almost nobody uses correctly. The most powerful natural infection defense tool in traditional poultry keeping, and the one you've almost certainly been underusing. Here's the thing about garlic. Everyone knows it. Everyone has it. It's the most universal kitchen ingredient on the planet. Papery white bulbs, cloves tucked inside, that unmistakable pungent smell the moment you crush one. You cook with it constantly without thinking about it, and almost nobody thinks to put it in the chicken coop. Most people think garlic is just food, a flavor base, something that makes other things taste better. The idea that it's one of the most effective broad-spectrum antibacterial agents in the natural world, something that traditional farmers have relied on specifically for infection defense in their flocks for hundreds of years, simply doesn't occur to most modern backyard keepers. In Amish farming communities, garlic is not a kitchen ingredient. It's a farm tool. It's added to drinking water. It's incorporated into feed. It's part of the management rhythm. Not something deployed when a bird gets sick, but something used consistently to prevent sickness from taking hold in the first place. Here's why garlic earns that position. The active compound is a lichen, released when garlic is crushed or chopped. A lichen is one of the most potent natural antibacterial compounds ever studied. It disrupts the cellular machinery of bacteria, including several strains that are resistant to synthetic antibiotics. It also carries antifungal and antiviral properties, and it supports immune cell activity, helping the body respond faster and more effectively when it does encounter a pathogen. In a flock setting, the result is birds that are simply harder to infect. Respiratory pathogens have a harder time establishing. Gut bacteria stays in better balance. Recovery from illness, when it does occur, is faster. And a flock that gets consistent garlic in its water during peak illness seasons, late autumn into winter, and early spring, shows measurably fewer disease events than one that doesn't. The right way to use it, and this is what almost nobody does correctly, is to crush the cloves and let them sit for a few minutes before use. That resting period is when a lichen forms and activates. Uncrushed garlic added whole to water releases very little of the active compound. The crushing step is the one most people skip, and it's the one that makes all the difference. Practical use: 2 to 4 crushed cloves per liter of drinking water. Change daily so it doesn't go stale. Can also be added to feed in minced or powdered form. During high disease pressure periods, when illness is moving through neighboring flocks, when weather stress is high, when birds are being integrated, increase frequency. The most familiar ingredient on this list. Is it the most powerful, the most overlooked in terms of how to actually use it correctly? That's garlic. Here's what you've just seen. 10 plants, 10 specific functions. Every single one of them already within reach. In kitchens, in gardens, in grocery stores, in herb pots on windowsills. The idea that keeping a flock healthy requires a chemical solution for every problem is a relatively recent one. Farming communities that kept flocks for generations before pharmaceuticals existed developed a deep, practical understanding of what plants could do. And they got results. Healthy birds, productive hens, flocks that survived without the intervention of a vet for every minor challenge. You don't need to run a flock the way those communities did, but you can borrow the knowledge. The plants are simple. The application is straightforward. The results, when you use them consistently rather than reactively, compound over time into a healthier, more resilient flock. That's the shift. From reaching for a chemical when something goes wrong, to building an environment where fewer things go wrong in the first place. It's not complicated. It's just a different starting point. If this changed how you look at what's already around you, hit the like button. Drop a comment below. Which one surprised you most? I want to know. And if you want more practical, real-world methods like this, methods that actually work, that have worked for generations, that don't require a pharmacy, subscribe. We break down simple systems that actually work. See you in the next one.